Welcome to the Spiritual Gifts podcast. I'm Sam Jackson, Gateway Redlands campus pastor, and joined by the ever smiling, always happy, never seen her upset, never seen her not smiling, Sarah Watterson.
That's quite an intense introduction.
Well, I looked
Sam,
over at you as I was recording my intro, and you had this big grin on your face. I'm like, that's Sarah.
Hello, thank you for having me.
You light up the room.
It's good to be here. It's good to be here.
It's good to have you, and it's been a delight to record these episodes with you.
I'll tell you, we've had the best time. It's awesome.
Good stuff. Good stuff. We are doing a spiritual gift right now. We're talking about a spiritual gift right now that just about every staff member of Gateway, not all of them, but a lot of them carry in their title, pastor, which is great, but can sometimes maybe just tinker with our understanding of what this gift is. Why don't you give us a bit of a biblical overview? A short biblical overview.
A short one.
Of this spiritual gift called pastor or shepherd, as we read in Scripture. Okay.
So, I mean, biblically, it comes across as a very caring person, a pastor. And in John, it talks very much of, where Jesus is the shepherd and he is the ultimate one who is the gatekeeper that looks after his flock and he loves them. And that's kind of like the ultimate pastor, shepherd as it was. Now, obviously we're not shepherds nowadays. I don't know, maybe some of you listening actually are shepherds and that's awesome. But for those of us that don't have any sheep, that's where we're looking, is looking at, we want to care for people, we want to love people, but we also want to point them towards Jesus and we want them to grow up in their faith, to actually help them move beyond what it is that they're walking through and to love them and to nurture them through it. Now, some people can do it, but the spiritual gift of it is actually where you are able to step into someone else's situation and you love them as Jesus loves them and you come alongside them as Jesus comes alongside them. And I think that's where we get this spiritual gift rather than it just being you're a nice person that's good to have coffee with. That's
good. I always found it interesting that of that, where it's listed in Ephesians, there's 5 sort of offices or 5 spiritual gifts, the people being the gifts to the church. We've grabbed this one pastor and decided to run with that as the title for staff in a church, and so we all get pastor in front of us, and that's fine. Where it doesn't help is you might have this gift, but you don't need to have that title in a church in order to exercise this gift.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really important for people listening, that it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to join a church staff team, but you do have a spiritual gift of caring for people and nurturing people. When I think of the times that I've been pastored here at Gateway, and without going into my backstory, I came with a bit of pain from my last context. I remember a time when I sat in the office of our guest, and next time I looked at my clock, it was 2 hours later because she allowed me to tell my story, and it was actually a moment where I felt really cared for and really well pastored. So Susan Elsmore, we're thrilled that you're joining us on the podcast today to talk about your spiritual gift.
Yay!
Wow, that's
of
awesome.
pastoring.
I don't know what to say to that.
You don't need to say anything. Well, thank you for that moment. That was a very therapeutic moment for me, for want of a better word. Tell us, it'd be great to hear from you. When did you start to sense that this was a gift that God had given you?
I find that really hard to define. I recognise as I look back that it's who God's made me to be. So loving people, walking alongside them, caring for them just comes naturally. So I didn't necessarily think of it as a spiritual gift. But I used to, as a teenager, often comment, I'm good with people. I can't write that on my resume. I don't, I love people well. But a few years ago, I was on a personal spiritual retreat. It was my first one ever. And I thought, I'll start off praying for people. And everybody I thought of, I was getting more and more upset because I realised that everybody I was praying for was just broken. There was some pain in their life and I was carrying the pain of this. And I just remember crying out to God going, I don't know what to do with this. I can't fix their brokenness. And, you've made me this highly relational person, but I don't know what to do with that either. And he, in that moment, just spoke into my heart and he said, that's right, Susan, that's who I've made you to be. And all I want you to do is to love people well and point them to me. And in that moment, I thought, I can do that. And it's become what I would say is the call of my life, to love people well, whatever the situation I'm in, and point them to Jesus. And it's interesting what Sarah said before, that ability to walk alongside. For a lot of years, I was probably more carrying than walking alongside. So even part of that learning to just kind of walk alongside, not carry somebody's burden, but walk with them. And that was a big distinction in that whole learning to love people well and point them to Jesus. I couldn't fix their problem, but I could point them to the one who could. And I love being able to do that.
Yeah.
So you're in a role now, like you're obviously on staff here at Gateway in an associate pastor role. You're also doing this other role, which I'll invite you to tell us about. But to me, as I said before we hit record, that to me just affirms this gift. Tell us about the role you're doing beyond Gateway that's sort of more national.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
I work with an organisation called Partners in Ministry, which the whole aim is to walk alongside pastors and support pastors and pastors' wives for church health. We recognise that the church in Australia is in decline. Pastors are burning out at great rates, and so this organisation is looking to step in and love on and support pastors before it gets to that point, so that we're seeing healthy pastors, healthy churches, and it seems crazy to actually work in a job that I get to use this, just what I love doing naturally. It feels like a real gift of God in my life in this season. So
yeah, very good. And yeah, I mean that's the fact that you have that role is just so unsurprising. It's a really good fit. Yeah. Talk to the people who are listening who have done some kind of spiritual gifts assessment, and in their gift mix, in their top 2 or 3, this gift has come up. If you were sitting down, walking alongside someone who comes to you and says, "Susan, I've just done this assessment and pastor has come up. What do I do with it?" What's your advice? What would you say?
Yes, that's a good question. I would say, you don't have to start thinking big. You can start small. It's noticing the ones and noticing how you can love people in need. It's amazing as you start to look the need that you see and just thinking, how can I help meet that need? I can't fix them, but I can support them. I can love them. I can point them to Jesus. So just that one-on-one care even is so crucial. Beyond that, in the church setting, there's opportunities to serve and to love people well. We have life group leader opportunities where you get to care for a small group of people in your home and do the journey, keep pointing them to Jesus. We have connect teams connecting one-on-one with people in their time of need, praying for people. In the Gens team, our neighbours team that goes out once a month to, or is it once a fortnight?
Once a fortnight.
Sarah, you would be able to answer that.
Good job.
Loving on people in our community and walking alongside people who have come from other cultures and other backgrounds and going through a tough time, and even up in our care centre in the op shop and on track, and just walking alongside people, pointing them to Jesus and getting to pray for people.
I want to ask you something that you mentioned a few minutes ago that I think a lot of people who have the gift of pastoring can sometimes fall into this. And you mentioned realising you're not there to fix someone or to solve their problems. And I think sometimes people who have the gift of pastoring can kind of get fuzzy with this line. How have you navigated this line yourself? You said, you've learned how to not do it. How does that look in your life where you don't get stuck with that person in the position they are, but you keep journeying with them and being able to give it to God? How's that looked for you?
That moment was probably pivotal for me, where God spoke that into my heart, that I can't fix them, but I can point them to Him. And that was releasing. I think up until that point, I had carried the burden of people's pain far too much. And I think as a someone with the gift of pastoring, it's easy to do that because you just love people so much and you feel their pain. It's easy to take that pain on as your own, and especially in the overwhelm when you can't fix it. But learning to just even just self-talk, I actually can't fix this, but how can I keep pointing them to Jesus? And sometimes it's as simple as just, I can send a text to let them know I'm thinking of them or praying for them, or in a moment just sitting down and praying and helping them give their issues or their circumstances to Jesus. It's, continually kind of letting go of it for myself, knowing